The name Nicholas Christakis may not mean anything to you. And while I have never met him, I have great admiration for him. Nicholas Christakis is a renowned physician and sociologist. He was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in 2009. And he is currently the Sterling Professor of Social and Natural Sciences at Yale University. And while his resume is extremely impressive, that is not why I have heard of him, and that is not why I admire him so much. What first brought Nicholas Christakis to my attention was a video from October 2015. He was standing in the courtyard, or in a courtyard, at Yale, and he was surrounded by a large group of students. Without going into the details, Dr. Christakis' wife, Erica, recently had sent out an email to some of the undergraduates at Yale. And to put it nicely, some of those students did not take too kindly to it. And that led to the gathering in the courtyard, where Professor Christakis was surrounded by about 75 to 100 students. As someone who was taught to show respect toward others, and especially toward those in authority, the behavior of the students that day was shocking to me. They got right up in his face, pointing accusatory fingers at him. Some of them yelled expletives at him. One of them told him that she hoped that he lost his job over this. I truly cannot imagine what it would be like to be in that situation. And I really hope that I am never put into that situation. But one thing I can say quite confidently is that I would not have responded the way Professor Christakis did. In the midst of dealing with that group of students, he listened patiently, always looking the students in the eye, even the ones who were screaming at him. He showed respect toward the students that surrounded him, even though they often showed total disrespect to him. He held his ground when he thought that their position was not one he agreed with, but he did so without even once resorting to raising his own voice. One of the reasons I admire Professor Christakis so much is because when I read today's gospel lesson, when I hear Jesus telling us, "But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you," my thought in the past has always been, sure, Jesus could do that. Yes, a few special saints could do that. But it was hard for me to imagine what that would look like today. But now, thanks to that video of Professor Christakis, I can actually envision what it does look like. I realize that it is possible to achieve. When someone clearly shows or sees you as their enemy, it is possible to see them as a friend. When someone shows total hatred toward you, it is possible to treat them with respect. When someone openly curses you, it is possible to bless them, listening patiently to their pain, and by also not taking their words personally. Yes, it is possible, but it is not easy. The easy way out is to do what we see people doing each and every day. Hate those who hate you. Curse those who curse you. Attack those who abuse you. And perhaps because this has become so pervasive, we don't even notice it any longer. We see it in Washington, D.C. We see it in our media. And we see it on social media. And for me, the irony is that those people they consider their enemies, those people they hate, those people they curse, are fellow citizens of the United States. No longer is our enemy reserved for Nazi Germany, communist Russia, or terrorist groups like ISIS. They now include those who don't share our views on immigration, our views on abortion, our views on the President of the United States or the Speaker of the House, our views on, well, you fill in the blank. And because we do not agree, we attack each other. We call one another nasty names. We even question one's patriotism or one's faith. And for the most part, this is done through the buffer of social media. And perhaps the worst thing of all, at least as far as Christians are concerned, is that we try to justify this behavior. We try to act as if it is okay to do. After all, everyone is doing it. And the other side, well, they're far worse than we are. But as Jesus reminds us quite clearly in today's gospel lesson, everyone is doing it is not a valid excuse. Because Jesus holds us to a much higher standard. In fact, Jesus holds us to the very highest standard. After telling us what we are to do, Jesus continues by telling us why we are to do it. Your reward, he says, will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Why are we to love our enemies or those we perceive to be our enemies? Because as children of our Heavenly Father, we are to do what God does. We are to be kind to the ungrateful, remembering that at times we are the ungrateful. We are to be compassionate toward the wicked, remembering that at times we are the wicked. We are to be merciful to others, remembering that God is always merciful to us. To close, let me address one final question. We know that we are to love our enemies. We know why we are to love our enemies. But how do we actually go about loving those enemies? To answer that question, let me return to my opening story. After the video of Professor Christakis went viral, not surprisingly, some people were shocked and others were outraged at those students. It only added fuel to the fire for some people's anger. However, Professor Christakis did his part to throw water on that fire. On his Twitter account, he posted these words: "No one, especially no student exercising right to speech, should be judged just on the basis of a short video clip. Just as some people were already judging them, just as some people were adding them to their list of enemies, Professor Christakis reminded us that there is a different approach, one that Jesus would have approved, one of grace and not condemnation. And second, in the days following that difficult confrontation, Professor Christakis and his wife invited some of the students into their homes for brunch to further the dialogue, to allow more time for meaningful conversation when the tensions weren't quite so high. Breaking bread with our perceived enemies. Again, I think Jesus would have approved. In a society where so many take the easy way out, dividing people into two groups, us versus them, resorting to name-calling just because others don't share our beliefs or opinions. May we remember that Jesus has called us to a higher standard, one that seeks to make friends of our so-called enemies, one that seeks the well-being of others, and one that we can trust by His grace, we too can live out. Amen. Our hymn